Recording. Meeting is called to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We'll start with the approval of the agenda. Before we start, there was a request to move item 9A out of the new business and up. We're going to make it part of the fire chief's report, the introduction of Megan LeBlanc, if that's all right with everybody. She's joining online, but I don't see her in the participants list yet.
Testing.
So we will see if we can get a hold of her to do that earlier. If she's not, we can handle it when she does get on. All right. Are there any
promoted? She hasn't approved. She hasn't
Okay.
accepted the promotion yet.
Got it. As long as she's online. All right. Any further adjustments to the agenda? If not, Chair will entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Motion's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. All right, public comment. Open the floor up for public comment. Anybody online or in person that would like to make any comments? Okay, seeing none, we will close public comment and move on to the fire chief's report. Welcome back, Chief Hovis.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. My fire chief report will be brief, and it is that I'm back to work and happy to be back at work. So I want to thank everyone in the organization for all of their hard work during my absence, especially Chief Eastman and some of the senior staff that are here today. Thank you so much. Much appreciated. So with that, that's my fire chief report for tonight. Thank you very much.
All right, would you like to introduce our new employee here for staff?
I'd like to turn it over to Shawnery Guzman, if I can,
Oh, there she is.
as the hiring manager, to introduce our new staff member, Shawnery.
All right, thank you, Chief. Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for having us tonight. We're really excited to introduce to you our new fire and life safety educator, Megan LeBlanc. Megan has hit the ground running and is really doing a great job already. So we're very happy with her outreach into our community. So I'm going to let her go ahead and tell us a little bit about herself and then maybe some of the things she's done just in her first month here. Megan?
Okay.
Oops. Try speaking one more time. We heard you just there at the end.
Okay. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Good evening, Commissioners, and thank you for having me. I'm Megan LeBlanc. I grew up in Briar, so I've lived in this area my entire life. I graduated from the University of Washington, so go Dogs, even though we had a rough day yesterday. I've spent the last 7.5 years working for the Lake Stevens Police Department in records management. I supervised a team of 4 in the records unit, as well as overseeing the body-worn camera program and public disclosure. And I currently live in Snohomish with my husband and our 4-year-old kiddo. And just a couple of the things that I've been able to do in the last month with the help of Shawnery and shadowing her in the community outreach team. It's been a lot, so I had to jot down a quick list for you guys. So we have done a classroom visit. We've done a preschool safety walkthrough. We've done a safety walkthrough for another elementary school and a medical facility. We delivered toys and diapers to kids in transition before Christmas. We've done 10 car seat checks. We delivered Snohomish County Foundation checks to local food banks before Christmas as well. What else have we done? I've attended 5 ACT classes, and then coming up this week, we have our first neighborhood night open house on Thursday, followed by the Scout Day open house on Saturday. And our 2024 calendar is already filling up with a lot of amazing events and outreach opportunities. And I'm super thankful to be part of this team. So thank you.
Well, welcome to the team. Are there any questions, any comments? Otherwise, we'll move on. And I do apologize. I skipped over number 4, which is important. Do we mind if we get the last report real quick before we go to business? Let's go to the union. Zach Cash.
Hey, good evening to all. It's nice to be with you tonight. The union report is pretty quick. It's speak on behalf of the members. Nice to have Chief Hovis back. Welcome back. Good to see you. And thanks to all the other folks there at HQ who kind of picked up slack in his absence. Welcome to Megan. I did have a chance to meet Megan not too long ago, and excited about what she's going to do for the organization. She spoke about kids in transition. I don't know if some of the other commissioners have had a chance to be involved with that, but that is something out of the school district that I've had the chance to go to in the past, and it's an amazing organization, and what the work that they do is a beautiful thing for the community. So if you do get a chance in the future, hopefully we're able to tie together, make sure that you get out to that event. Or those events. There's usually a few throughout the year. And my last thing is just news out of Walla Walla about firefighter Ryan Pleasance, local 404, who had a death in the line of duty while he was on duty. And that's something we have been working toward as far as a local is finalizing, if we haven't already, our plan in order to make sure we're covered in case there is, in the event that there is an on-duty death, that we have that plan in action. So that's it for me tonight. I hope you have a good night. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the union? All right, seeing none, we'll move forward by moving backwards to the board chair and vice chair elections. Open the floor for nominations.
Yeah. I'd like to nominate. I'd like to nominate John Kenny to be the chair.
John Kenny? Jim Kenny?
Jim Kenny.
All right.
Do we have a new commissioner?
I'll second. All right, there's been a nomination. Are there any further nominations? Commissioner Teofilak.
Yeah, I'll nominate Micah Rowland for chair.
All right,
Michael Furnoff nominates Michael Rowland for chair.
all right. Are there any further nominations? Hearing none, we'll go to candidates. Jim, do you want to go first?
Sure, happy to. Thank you for the nomination in the second. I have the time available in my schedule to receive the telephone calls and make the telephone calls, attend the meetings, answer the questions, both from the board and staff, to keep the administrative side of the board moving forward. With my time, I want to focus on the big issues facing the board in 2024, which include annexing Edmonds into South County Fire, preparing the capital facilities plan for execution in future years, expanding the fire marshal's office to provide the quality of service that we want to see, and preparing this year, 2024, for the opening of Sound Transit Extension into Linwood. These are kind of the big ticket items that I see that the board has to address this year and needs to focus on, and I believe I can help the board to do so. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Speaking on my behalf, I couldn't agree more as far as priorities. We have a lot ahead of us this year. I have a lot of experience both in this board now, a year ago, 2 years ago almost, when I was appointed to this position. It's been a big learning experience, and I've been able to contribute in many ways that I've found a lot of joy in. As far as the chair position, I do have the ability to serve in that, and I have the skill. I've chaired organizations, small and large. I know parliamentary procedure, so I can ensure that we have an orderly process here. I think one of the things that's most important is making sure that this board operates efficiently, that we don't get caught down in the weeds if we can avoid it, and that we find a way to work together to find consensus, to debate the issues, to not necessarily just go into a debate with a decision already made, but to help make a better decision as a group. I think that's what we're here for. So I appreciate the nomination and look forward to helping out in any capacity. All right, So
Are we allowed, as a commissioner, can we say a few words that the reason? Yeah,
it is really up to us how we run this election.
I think it's.
As far
yeah.
as Robert's rules is concerned, as long as you don't go into attacks on other candidates, speaking and, positives is normally what's asked for in the election process, but we're not bound by that if
Right. No, I'm, the reason is I do this is because I'm looking at the organization itself. I don't know, attacking, I don't know, to me, it's not attacking. To me, it's critical is that as a chair, I think you need to be, definitely need, Robert Rule is critical, but we don't run the whole organization just by Robert Rule. I think the chair need to have some experience in it. I think especially during the RFA, Commissioner Kenny is the one who negotiated with Edmonds for the contracts, and Commissioner Kenny also really was a chair on the capital facility plan, which we really need to start kicking that on right now. And then also and he is really familiar, know all the players around here, all the commissioner in other districts and other the mayor, the council member, all that. I think which is really critical. This is a critical year, so I think that we need that kind of guiding us, because it's not just the person need to know what issues to be on the board meeting and pacing yourself. I have to say that last 20 years, except for me 4 years and McGahey for 2 years, the rest of the time, Commissioner Kenny has done a very good job in guiding us to today. So however, it did not happen just today. It was happened starting 20 years ago. And then actually it worked really well with the chief at that time. Together, the chief and the chair really worked out the agenda and to the issues out. So that's how I definitely, I mean, I'm the one recruiting you here because I think you have the smart and everything else. But I think at this time, I think you probably will be a good chair in the year, 2 years from now. But now I think that experience really need to drive up the whole thing.
All right, are there any further comments? All right, hearing none, we will go to a vote. We'll do this just by raising our hands, or if you're online speaking up. All those in favor of Jim Kenny, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
All those in favor of Micah Rowland?
Aye.
All right, 4-3, the ayes have it. Thank you.
Congratulations.
And thank you. I will be definitely calling you a lot more often to get some of that experience, because I think we need to collaborate more as a board and get the input of the people that have been here. I've always appreciated what you brought to the meeting, so thank you. Moving on to vice chair elections, are there any nominations for vice chair?
Michael Furnahoff.
Michael Furnahoff.
That's okay. I nominate Mark Lawrence.
Oh, no. Mutually assured destruction, I think they call that.
If elected, I will not serve.
The nomination that's not accepted. We have a nomination from Michael Furnahoff. Are there any further nominations for vice chair? All right, seeing none, we'll move to vote. All those in favor of Michael Furnahoff for vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Welcome, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, all right. Do you have any comments, or would you like to move on?
No acceptance speech. I have my cool shirt, my free parking. That's all I require.
All right. So moving on, we're going to go on to the annual meeting calendar for approval, page 3. This is just our regularly scheduled meetings and our work sessions. We do have one change of November 6th being a Wednesday. I believe that's Wednesday, right? Yep. Wednesday, November 6th, because election day is on Tuesday, as it always is. Are there any questions, comments, changes? Any other dates that people notice that are going to be problematic? I believe there was discussion about an event that gets held every year that happens to coincide on a Tuesday with the fire service. Could you? refresh my
National
memory on
Night
that?
Out. National
Do you
Night
know
Out.
What night that is?
I don't off the top of my head.
First Tuesday of August. So I would move that we modify the schedule for that Tuesday, August 6th, and move it to Tuesday, August 7th, so that we can all participate as much as possible in that National Night Out. There's a second?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Yes, it would be Wednesday, August 7th instead of Tuesday, August 6th. Any objections to that? All right, hearing none, we will consider it
I ask a
amended. Yes,
question?
please.
I don't see in here any special meeting, or I should say, well, technically special meeting, but workshop either in the spring or the fall. I didn't know if we were going to talk about that at another time. I didn't want to fail to mention it today and then have that be used as a sword against me in the future, because personally, I think we should have both. I know the board has disagreed with me. This past year, we did, for the first time in at least a few years, have a fall workshop. And I would suggest we have both the spring and the fall, but at a minimum the fall. And so I didn't know what this incorporated, or if we want to talk about it at another time, as folks can think about whether they want to do that or not as we get into the year.
Yeah, I believe those would be special meetings that we would call. And I do agree that those are something that we should talk about and schedule out. I don't think we necessarily need to do that tonight. I think this is just for our notice to the public of our regularly scheduled meetings, and again, the workshops for the standard stuff that we just always do. But we'll definitely make sure that we start talking about that soon so we can plan.
I haven't missed my chance then.
Yeah.
I think this is just what repeat, from last year, right? There's not any special thought giving to it. Right?
It's, again, this is just the regularly scheduled meetings that we're agreeing to for posting on the website and just the standard stuff. This isn't anything additional or extra.
So, but I do agree that the workshop is very important. That's the spring workshop, really get an introduction to people who, not familiar with, and get a chance for the staff to tell us what they do. And that's the initial budget.
Yes, Michael.
I just
Commissioner
wanted
Frohoff.
to, thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to Jim Kenny and Commissioner Chan, because I think that's an excellent idea that we have those two workshops, especially as we move into, let's just say, more dynamic moving parts. Their expertise and their guidance is going to be essential, and that will be a great opportunity for us to exchange information.
All right. Well, let's get our schedules together, and then maybe we can discuss it at the next work session, which will be in February, and that we can schedule that for April, May. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah.
All right. Any other comments, questions, changes? Anything from staff? All right. Okay. Then with that one minor change of August 6th to August 7th, the chair will entertain a motion to adopt this calendar for the year. All right, Commissioner Wittes,
Second.
and seconded by Commissioner Chalfalak. Any more discussion? Hearing none, moving to a vote. All those in favor of adopting the calendar for the year, say aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, we have a calendar. Moving on, committee creation, dissolution, and appointments. So we've got a couple of committees that we have going on this year. We had a bylaws committee which finished its work. Unless we think that needs to be resurrected, we can put that one off on the side, which leaves our standing committees of our finance committee and our intergovernmental committee. I would propose that we add a capital facilities committee so that we have that up. We've got Station 22 that's going to be starting soon, so we need to get that spun up, but also planning with the architectural firm for the capital facilities work and figuring out the finances. So is there any thought to that? If not, we'll add that as an ad hoc committee with a motion.
Yeah, but I think we also need appointment for the for Snow 911. And
Correct.
I think Commissioner Witters is the best person to be in there because he know all the people, and which is a really critical position there because that really influencing how Snow 911 respond and also the budget and that type of thing. When I was there, I was a finance committee. So maybe, Commissioner Witters, since you know all the people there, so you can wiggle yourself back into the finance committee. And I think Commissioner Daniels, or I think he was on the finance committee. So we might that's also, kind of so in kind of in that position.
Let's hold off on necessarily assigning people yet. I just want to see, is there any more committees that we need to spin up at this point? We've got capital facilities, intergovernmental, and the finance committee. Is there anything else that you guys think that we should look at this year that we'll need to get a committee spun up at this point? Yes.
Is there any interest in having an HR committee, human resources committee? So in the more distant past, we had two standing committees, the HR, finance, and then like a version of the intergovernmental committee. Three committees. To take on HR issues that come up doesn't meet as much usually as finance, which has a more regular cycle to it, and intergovernmental, just depending, as a place to address HR issues. If I recall, well, maybe I'm not recalling correctly, but I vaguely recall we have some HR policies that will end up coming to us, but more generally to take on any HR issues that we have. Just a thought.
How exactly did that try to kind of catch things before they got to executive session type discussions? What exactly role was used in the past?
Yeah, not hot executive session items. No, that's for the board, but more longer term HR issues, succession type issues, training issues, anything that you might classify as a kind of an HR type issue, but not something hot and immediate and needs the board's input in executive session. Not that type. Not trying to remove that from the board's consideration. But generally, it was these longer term type issues that the board would take on. I'm not necessarily saying we absolutely need it. I'm just saying we're asking, so it's a good time to at least raise the issue.
Well, I'll look to our HR director. I think as a kind of a newer face here, you've been looking at the policies that are in place and have been inherited for years. Do you think that there's value in forming a committee specifically, again, trying not to get into day-to-day operations as we try, but trying to, if there's policy changes that need to be done, vetting those, getting them all kind of worked out before they come to the board? Or is that something that, might be not as helpful, or that you're not planning on doing? What's your thoughts?
I think it depends entirely upon the focus. So if it was more strategy, longer term things, particularly things that might require more than minimal investment, that might be a really good use for a committee like this. If we carve out really operational elements and the kind of exigency of issues that come before the executive committee, I think that could be a perfect body of work for a subcommittee to work on.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Yes.
Yeah, the HR committee in many organizations, they use it. Actually, the word is HR, human resources. I think long-term strategy, what kind of people we organization need, that type of thing. When I first started as at Fire District 1, I was on the HR committee, but at that time, we do not have any HR policy. We do not really it was really kind of held up this long-term strategy. I think it's really useful because our organization changed. We need to have some direction, what kind of talents that we need to attract, that type of thing. So I'll support the HR committee.
Any other comments on the HR committee subject? Go ahead.
A while ago, you were talking about one other committee we don't have to deal with building the fire station.
Capital facilities.
You don't have one going.
No, there's no active capital facilities, but I was proposing that we add that to the list of committees that we want to have.
Okay, then we got off on another one. So, do you need a motion for each individual committee? Are we voting on this?
Well, let me propose some motions here in just a moment on that. For the new committees, we would want to establish their scope. So we would want to say basically, this is what the committee's, focus is and their role is. That way we're assigning, what they're supposed to be working on so that they adhere to that and not go outside of it. That's kind of how standard committees are formed. As far as the existing committees, unless we want to make changes, we can just adopt the existing ones as they are and then add these two. If we want to add those as well.
Thank you.
So that's 4 committees that I have right now: intergovernmental, finance, HR, and capital facilities. Commissioner Teoflag.
I know I'm in the minority here, but I'm more against committees. I've said this in the past. I served on the intergovernmental committee, and it was very good to interact with staff on a more intimate basis. But from my takeaway from that was the 2 commissioners who were on it probably got more information than other commissioners, which is kind of unfair a little bit. It's our job to maybe disseminate the information, but I feel like that same information could have just been disseminated to the board in a regular meeting. So as far as the committees, I guess for the one that I would say that I'm against is probably the HR committee. I feel like it's a little too broad right now. I know that we just kind of talked about maybe what could happen, but I feel like it's not necessary and it's maybe getting too far in the weeds.
Okay. Any other discussion on the HR committee item? We'll get into specific debate and discussion if we need to on each of these as they come up, but go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I'm not necessarily opposed to HR committee, but I'd sure like to know the scope before I vote on that. Thank you.
Okay, so to start with, the chair will entertain a motion to establish the intergovernmental and finance committee with the same kind of mission orders or the same operating, what would the word be? Directive as they have for this current year.
Can we also clarify that those committees are 3-person committees?
Yes, these would be 3-person committees or 3 commissioner committees because we can't have any more than 3 commissioners on a committee. If we need to assign other individuals to the committee, well, that can be done. All right. Yes.
Motion?
Yes.
So moved.
All right. Is there a second? All right. Any discussion on the intergovernmental or finance committees being established? We will work on assigning people to those committees after this meeting. All right. Hearing no further discussion, we go to a vote. All those in favor of establishing the intergovernmental and finance committees, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Moving on, we have the Capital Facilities Committee. As far as scope of this committee, this would be working with the architectural agency on some of the issues before they get to the board, working on funding for the capital facilities plan, and then also reviewing the capital facilities plan to see if there's any changes that need to be made since it was last drafted. Is there any other items that you guys can think of for those committees? Or for that committee? All right, so the chair will entertain a motion to form the Capital Facilities Committee with the directive of working with the architectural firm to build Station 12, working on the capital facilities plan and the future capital facilities work.
So moved.
All right, it's been moved. Is there a second? Yes.
Second.
Is there, before we go into discussion, is there,
Well, I'm looking for a friendly amendment
Yeah.
from Commissioner Lawrence, three-person committee.
yes,
I just want to be sure we're clarifying.
Just one, and that would be me, please.
is the amendment agreed to?
I agree to him.
All right, we'll avoid a vote. All right. So is there any other discussion on the capital facilities committee? Hearing none, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, all those opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Moving on to the HR committee. Does seem like maybe there's a little discussion that needs to happen here as far as scope of the committee. Is there any input first from our HR director as far as what you would propose for the scope?
Well, consistent with what I said before, I think if we can focus on things that are strategic and forward-looking that might require either longer term or greater than minimal investment, those are the sorts of things that could make it functional and useful and not, quote, get in the weeds, as it were. Some of those things tie in a lot with financial planning and the things that would come up in that committee. So it could be those topics get absorbed into an existing committee as opposed to creating a separate one. So that's a thought, but I do think it's possible to sort of wall off the things that really would make sense for the board to be spending time on, whether it was separate or combined with intergovernmental finance.
So would a possible scope, in your opinion, be review and amendment of current policies and long-term strategic planning? Okay.
Yes.
Any further? Just establishing scope, we can all discuss this. Go ahead.
So I just moved to have the committee.
Anything else to scope before we get the motion on the floor?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, just let's hold off on this and let human resources come up with the plan. And we can then flesh that out or agree with it, and then we can talk about having the committee. I don't want to vote on it, having that tonight. Don't know enough.
Any further discussion before a motion comes to the floor, and then we can decide whether to take it up or not? Is there a motion to form the HR committee, three commissioner maximum, to handle HR policy, review and possible amendment, and long-term strategic planning as its directive? Is there a motion?
Yeah, I make the motion.
All right,
I'll second it.
all right, seconded. Is there any discussion? Yes.
Just like to say that I kind of agree with Commissioner Lawrence. I didn't like the look on his face, the eyes. So, you know, if we could just wait so he could have some input, I think it would be better.
All right,
One of the things, commissioners, I've spent a lot of time with David, and I think what he was suggesting within his narrative was there's a possibility potentially to have the finance committee and be a finance and HR committee, if that was the will of the board, so that issues could be taken up that were specific to finance, which would probably be the bulk of the work, and then also strategic HR issues. If maybe that would economize some of the commissioner's valuable time as well. So is that what you were saying? Okay. All right. Thank you.
I would look for input from those that are currently on the finance committee. We don't have our CFO here as far as does that sound like a reasonable plan as far as time and the crossing of work streams, or what are you thinking since you serve on the committee?
Yeah, I'm open. I'm real open-minded. You guys don't believe me. I'm a real open-minded person,
Microphone.
except I don't open microphone. I'm open-minded. I think that might be a good way to see what we can do with the finance committee. And then if we think we're way too much on the finance committee, but then we'll bring it out as a HR committee. And I do like to have inputs, and so we can talk more and say what we look like. Yeah.
Any further
Thank you.
discussion?
Thank you for Commissioner Lawrence's suggestions here.
Welcome. Any further discussion on this? I will say that I can understand the commissioners that are urging us to hold off on this, since this is something new and kind of got sprung on you. I would also say that, given that CFO Bothwell is not here, I would like to make sure that he is on board with combining his committee with something else. So I would personally lean towards voting no on this, with the intent to bring it back up in a future meeting once we have this input. The motion on the floor is to form a separate committee. We could do that tonight and then combine them later, or we could just hold off on the HR committee and do it later as combined with the finance committee. It's up to you guys, but as far as I haven't heard an amendment to form the combined committee yet. So
Why don't we table?
Yeah.
Have the chief come back and.
Yeah.
all right, is there any objection to postponing this motion indefinitely? All right, hearing none, the motion is postponed and we can move on to Snow 911.
Actually, Mr. Chair, can I ask a question? Because
Yes.
we're on the issue of committees. Liaison Swisher brought up an issue at our last meeting of December that I haven't seen come up before. It was actually an executive session, but it applies to the issue of committees. And I wanted to ask about it, and that is, for committees that we've set as 3 people, what is the ability of liaisons then to sit on those committees? Do they have to sit in one of the 3 seats, or can they be a fourth liaison because they're not a voting member of the board? And I think that's an important question to ask because, you know, we've got valuable human resources in Liaison Hoffman and Liaison Swisher to potentially use in committees. Do they have to be one of the 3? Can they actually be essentially a fourth, of course, non-voting, but a 4th member? And how can we take advantage of that if we want to? I wanted to be sure I got that out there because I was hoping to get a resolution around, could we do that? Because I don't mean to throw Commissioner Hoffman under the bus, but you know, if Commissioner Swisher, Commissioner Hoffman are interested in serving on those committees, I would like to have it available for them.
I have already asked Richard Davis, our attorney, about this, and they are allowed to serve on the committee. They do not have to hold one of the 3 seats.
So there essentially can be a 4th member.
Correct.
Correct. Yeah, we established the membership of the committees, you know, and we can add to them as we see fit. These are ad hoc committees, the way that they're being passed, so they're not written into the bylaws as a certain size or anything like that. So we have full flexibility, as long as we don't violate the Public Meetings Act by having more than 3 commissioners in it. I guess anything's possible. Good. All right. Yes.
So in that case, you don't need necessary 3 board members on it. So that could be 2 elected board members and 1 liaison. That would be good. I mean, too many cooks, you know, spoil the soup.
Yes.
Make it unwieldy.
We'll have to see on, you know, who wants to volunteer for what, before we make the appointments and, you know, figure out if we've got that. If we don't have 3 commissioners, we only 2, then that's fine. And the liaisons want to serve in any of the committees. You know, you're welcome to put your hat in the ring.
And they could, liaisons could serve on as many as they wanted to, right?
I'm sure they could. All right. Looks speak 1,000 words right there. All right. So we will have an appointment for the Snow 911 board. My understanding is that they caucus in April. That's the soonest whoever we put on there could be put on. So we can figure out who we want to put on it. I know you suggested Commissioner Wittes. I think that's an excellent suggestion. I'm sure there's other possibilities as well. Do we want to talk about that right now? Or would you like to talk about that in the following meeting? Assign somebody that be able to actually be seated.
No, actually, that's very different. Actually, we do, because unless something changed, because we are one of the 3 big ones. So we automatically should have a seat already in there.
My understanding of it is once the seated individual cycled off, which was our former Commissioner Daniels, that seat was filled by the alternate. And at that point that they don't caucus to reappoint people to those positions, it's a temporary type thing. It's just taking over and moving forward until April. That's, can I get maybe some
Yeah,
input?
I'm now the primary vote as the first alternate, so I'm one of the three primary votes for the large fire caucus until the commissioner is added back on in the mix.
So you are the alternate right now,
Correct.
right? Okay, still
First
belong to us.
alternate, now in the third vote.
Gotcha. And there's a second.
I took your old spot essentially when you were on the board.
Right,
Yeah.
right. No,
So
no,
there's other alternates beyond you, so you couldn't just step down for us to replace you or anything like that. There's no provision for us to swap.
Correct. Commissioner Waugh is behind me, for example, from Surfer.
okay.
But I think what Commissioner Chan is thinking about is that the finance subcommittee is short someone potentially.
Subcommittee,
I'm
now,
on-
finance committee,
I'm on the personnel committee.
personnel committee. Okay. But, well, I still encouraging you, just go and attend the meeting and get to know the players right now. And just. Well, I mean, everybody can attend. Are they alive in person meeting now, or are they still on Zoom?
Still on Zoom.
Still on Zoom, but anyone can attend the
It's an open meeting.
first open meeting. Yeah.
Well, anyone that would like to volunteer for that, I'd recommend you attend at least one meeting and maybe look at some of the old recordings so you can get up to speed. Best way to hit the ground running, and then we can listen to that at a subsequent meeting. It's all right for the board. Okay. Any further discussion on committees? And then I will come back with some suggestions for appointments. If anybody wants to volunteer, please reach out to me. Okay, moving on.
Actually, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I just did want to clarify that per our bylaws, the board elects, or the board by motion fills the committees.
Correct.
So, okay.
Yeah, I think in the past, the chair appointed and the board removed. I know we
Right.
did some work around that does the chair propose anymore, or is it just, we just do this open?
Well, my suggestion is between today and maybe next week that you send out an email, find out who's interested in what, just to kind of corral who's generally interested. It may fall nicely that there's not many or any conflicts, but there could be conflicts for higher demand committees, and then the board's got to sort out. But if we're all sitting here saying, no, I don't, no, you do it, that's kind of unwieldy.
Well, I'll
So,
come with whatever I can get from you guys, and then we can kind of use that as a starting point.
there we go. Sounds good.
All right. Moving on to priorities planning and exercise for discussion. So last year we had a exercise where we decided what our top 3 priorities were. I did go through and kind of look at all the other priorities and get some updates on them to figure out where we were on them. I'll get that out to you guys via email so you can at least see the old list, but I'd like to gather information from you as to what you think the priorities for the next year should be. I think obviously the biggest one that's on our plate right now is figuring out the future for Edmonds. Obviously, and the capital facilities for Station 22 coming into the mix, as well as the ones in the future. But we've got plenty to select from. Is there anything you guys would like to discuss tonight around those priorities, or any suggestions you want to kind of float before we go to a more serious exercise with lining them up on the wall and putting stars next to them as has been done in previous years? If that worked well, we could do that. Yes, Commissioner Chair-Flack.
I think as a board, we agreed for long-term revenue planning, the options of in 2024 going to the voters with a 10-year benefit charge renewal. So I guess that would be one of the things that we should focus on.
Okay. Just a second. Just opening it up here. So some of the other ones that I saw that we didn't select or get to, or didn't select as our top three, but we may want to talk about. Let me see here. There was talk about establishing early conflict resolution procedures. There was establish EMS only at storefront as backfill stations to meet increased demands. We have, we're waiting on an update for the board meeting room technology. That was on there. There was a suggestion to define fire commissioner role, description, and responsibilities that we didn't take up. And I think that one was actually on our selected list of the 4, but I got to double check on that. It may have gotten bolded accidentally. The HQ basement upgrade or lease. I know we did some work or are doing some work on the code compliance, but as far as the change, we haven't made any changes to the basement. So if that's something we want to talk about this year. Succession plan, early identification of leadership talents for admin and management. Work with the county to find solutions for homeless problem to put pressures on EMS demands on the South County. Work with the county to find solutions for emergency room capacity issues. General strategic planning, RFA insurance, self-insurance, excess liability coverage discussions. More preparation on the arrival of light rail, and I think that those were the ones that we didn't select or get to that I just wanted to bring up so that you guys were aware of them. I think there's an in progress for one of these, the cost of service determination. So that's, I guess, in work by finance. So just wanted to kind of run through those real quick. If you guys have any suggestions, I'll send out an email soliciting these so we can get a list of them. And then we'll get that list out at the next meeting for review in the packet. All right. Everybody okay with lining them up on the wall and doing the star exercise that you guys did? That one works well. All right. We'll plan for that then. All right. We talked a little bit about this last meeting, Commissioner apparel. And Melissa has provided in the packet a draft commissioner policy that was considered a couple of years ago. And wanted to continue the discussion on this. The suggestion that I had made last time was that we add in a heavier coat so that we can attend wet events or cold events and still be able to be identified in our role. Beyond that, I don't think we had any big suggestions for change, but now that we've seen it in the packet, is there any discussion on this matter?
Yeah, I feel like this is an agreeable de minimis gear rule to have. But if you want more, you'd have to pay for it out of pocket. And then I guess the question is, what happens when we are no longer commissioners? What to do with the gear? My opinion is it all has to be given back, whether you paid for it or not. My opinion is once you are no longer a commissioner, that you have to give your gear back, whether you paid for it or not. And it's okay to disagree.
No, it's not that I disagree, but I think I kind of, they said, well, bad actor will wear the uniform, they'll continue to pretend to be commissioner. I just don't see that type of happening in here. I mean, you're commissioner. To me, I assume everybody is here good character. I don't like the labeling. Well, that character will start wearing that, right? I might be wearing that in my house, stuff like that, but I don't go wearing around and telling people I'm commissioner, right? So that's, I don't know. I mean, just to me, I mean, I like to have that uniform to put it on my wall as a memorabilium that, you know, I spent 20 years in this place, right? Put it in the shelf or something like that.
I believe in the last meeting, we asked for maybe follow-up from Attorney Rich Davis on any of the legal implications. I know that this packet here talked about IRS auditing and things like that, which wasn't brought up last time, but do you have any anything to add to this as far as you know, what do we do with shirts once they're past their life or when a commissioner leaves for avoiding any legal issues?
So we looked at this, and I don't think that there's really an issue of a gift of public funds, which is really the primary concern that we had. I mean, as a practical matter, people are not going to want used apparel. The apparel, once it's been utilized by a commissioner, is not going to have any substantive market value. And so I think that it's really kind of a business decision for the commission to go either way. You can require them to be turned back in if you had other concerns, but from legally, I don't think that there's a problem if you allow commissioners to retain those at the end of their term.
All right, and anything in regards to the de minimis discussion on what is going too far when it comes to whatever we choose to do here?
So I think that the risk is that if you were to buy extravagant clothing or buy more than is reasonably related to your duties as commissioners, then that could be a problem. That's kind of extravagant government spending. And I think the auditor would take a look at that and probably issue some kind of criticism. When it comes to just basic apparel that you will wear when you go to community events and other events where you're representing South County Fire, I think that is appropriate. All I would say is, it should be reasonable. And so I assume that there are different levels of apparel that you can buy, from, stuff that is kind of middle of the road to very expensive, extravagant things. I think you need to focus on things that are reasonable in that sense. What is reasonable? It's hard to define, but I mean, I think we all know that if you were to pick the highest price item that is, it does the same thing, but it's just way more money, that's probably not appropriate. And if somebody wants the more expensive apparel, like very high price things, then maybe that ought to be on their dime rather than have South County Fire pay for that.
No
That's
hand-embroidered Versace jackets for us, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Yes.
Right.
I wouldn't think that we would go that direction, but it's good to know that it's off limits. I did see also in this packet here that there was the ID card. I'm sorry, Mike, Commissioner Fernoff.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that, I've been around uniforms, gosh, probably since I was start off as an Explorer Scout. And one of the things that we're always challenged with, depending on what organization you're with, is the brand identity and some controlled items. And we found that simply somebody needs, let's say, a 3-system parka, for example, they're made fairly inexpensively, like from 511 Tactical, and they come in various colors, which distinguishes us from the line people within the department. If somebody chose to do that because they found themselves in parades and foul weather and stuff like that, it's pretty easy to just simply affix a patch. And when that person retires or steps away, the patches are recovered, but the coat remains their property, and it's something that would be purchased by them. So it really reduces the overhead for the conversation about impersonation or getting yourself into hot water. And mainly what we're really concerned about within organizations are people like wearing their attire to either sporting events or bars or something that's going to give it a negative connotation, not necessarily going out and running into a burning building and impersonating a firefighter. It's just a bad, and when we say bad actor, it's just bad choices really about where that emblem is actually displayed. So that might just give you some food for thought. You could go extravagant. Those parkas are about $300, but they're a 3-system like ski parka, so it's par for the course. It's just customary for what they are, and affixing patches to them in a way that is appropriate, so you're properly identified, is probably one of the easiest things to do. It gets more complicated as you get into printed T-shirts and stuff like that, which we tend to give everybody in the rank and file. That's harder to sort of neuter and render helpless because of the screening and stuff that goes on the back. But just keep that in mind. It's just my 2 cents on the matter.
All right. And then as I was bringing up the new thing that I saw in here was about the ID cards. I do understand why the ID cards that we have that open up doors don't say the business, but for firefighters in general, you have some sort of identification that if you go to a scene or in the case of a natural disaster, that identifies you as a firefighter, correct?
Yes.
All right. We've been talking about kind of disaster preparedness, things that we may need to have. I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea if the commissioners had some sort of ID card separate from their badge so that it doesn't, conflate the two, but so that if you need to identify yourself at the scene of a major incident or something like that, and there's a cordon, that there's something there other than, let me look it up on the website, here we are. I don't think that that's necessarily a bad idea, but look to you guys for thoughts.
I feel like as commissioners, we shouldn't be rolling up on a scene of an accident and being doing anything more than an average citizen would do. We need to stay out of the first responders' way. So I don't feel that there's a need for us to have this card that you're referring to. We don't hold any knowledge that would help in that response. As a volunteer, if you're in your volunteer role, you're on call, or you've been called up for that, then that makes sense. But I don't want us getting in the way of the first responders.
Yeah, no, I was not suggesting that we would be at all getting in the way. I was speaking of either emergencies or conferences you go to that, what agency you're with, can we see some identification, that type of thing. I don't know if it's ever come up, but since I saw it in here as something that was talked about before.
Yeah, the history of this is if you look at page 10 of 16 at the bottom, our security access cards used to have an identifier for Fire District 1 or South County Fire. At the time that this was being discussed was right in the wave 2 of COVID, is to have something on the right-hand side that identified you as a member of our organization due to COVID restrictions or the stay home, stay healthy order was the right-hand side. The left-hand side got you in the door if you were employed and or a commissioner. Those are the history of the two documents right there.
Gotcha.
Comment, sir.
Let's go to Commissioner Chan, since his hand up is up first on the Zoom order, and then we'll go to Commissioner Vernoff.
Yeah, I think before it was two combined in one, but I still feel like we do need to identify ourselves because, a lot of time people, you go to government agency or do whatever it is, whatever, you really identify yourself. Yes, you're okay. As a commissioner, I'm still part of this organization. Last things I would do impersonated a firefighter. There's no, I'm going to ask you, if fire commissioner, can we arrest anyone? Can we do anything outrageous? No, right? So a lot of times you just identify yourself. Yeah, you belong to this organization. I think that's important. You use it, you don't use it, that's fine. The commission don't feel like it. But actually, I do have a questions. I know the retired Commissioner McGee here. He still have his, Class A uniform. Is that, why, he doesn't need to turn into his Class A?
There are two items where the RFA gives to people or employees in good standing when they leave if they're operational, and that is their fire helmet and their Class A's that they have or that the RFA has purchased and that they have worn so that they could attend events in the future.
They don't return the helmet.
No, they do not need to return the helmet. It's just like we talked about before, probably similar to the items on this list that you might wear for up to 6 years of your commissioner term, right? They're a little worn and used and nobody else is going to wear them. Just like a Class A, it's custom fitted for somebody. So they take that and they wear that for the rest of their lives if they come to formal events like a funeral
And
service.
you're not afraid them to impersonate a regular,
I've never had that fear.
okay.
No, it may have been done somewhere before, but I've never been fearful of somebody stealing my Class A or me impersonating someone else or another former firefighter. I don't know about the rest of the gentlemen. No.
So to me, if you don't trust the commissioner, then I know, to me, that's not the reason that, we impersonate anything.
Yeah, just to put this into context, again, on page 10 of 16, those 2 ID cards, I would rather trust myself with not bringing my security access card to commissioner's conference, let's say in Chelan and accidentally lose it versus a security ID card that identified who I was that couldn't get me into every door in this organization. That's why we split those 2 things up right there.
All right, no,
So
no,
this is staff suggestion.
it makes sense to split it up because someone can
does.
pick it up and then they can use it,
Yes,
So-
sir.
So I think we should need both. That's I come to.
All right, Commissioner Furnahoff.
Oh, yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just putting on, my hat as an emergency manager and talking with Chief Eastman over the year or a year and 6 months or so, we both agreed that there might be opportunities in which our commissioners would benefit by having some kind of credential that was above a business card. And it really comes down to extraordinary circumstances where we might see regional roadblocks or some sort of curfew, maybe related to pandemic. That's probably our closest example that I could give that most people can relate to. But other things would be like a regional earthquake or something along those lines where we're trying to assemble our commissioners who might have to form what's called a policy group under the incident command system and give extraordinary powers to the chief or do some sort of modification of work standards or something along those lines. And essentially, it's about assembling people and making sure that they can get through roadblocks. I think the other examples, going to a conference and losing your ID, I think, well, that's just going to be traumatic with your driver's license, credit cards, and everything else. What I would be more concerned about is giving access to a facility to unauthorized personnel rather than lose my ID card. But that's just me. But that's kind of the argument about why, folks get credentials. Every organization I've been in, I've always had a credential of some kind. It's officially printed. It doesn't look Mickey Mouse. It doesn't look like it was printed on somebody's printer. And they're a controlled item, but they're used very specifically, especially say, for example, the commissioners were to take a tour of a military base or go into other highly controlled areas. Those official credentials do get you in. We do have some representatives on our fire department going to the Washington State Fusion Center. That's an intel area. I've been part of that organization for, I think it's going on 20 years, maybe more. So, anytime that I would have to go down there, I would have to present my official ID. If we don't have official ID, then they have to make lots of phone calls and it can delay access. So it's just kind of a practical, functional piece.
All right.
I think it's important for the ID, and I say that just going back to something simple as OSO. We'd take a commissioner up there just they wanted to see what was going on. We had half our department there, and they needed the ID to get in there. It just, to me, is fairly important to have that. Have board members do it. It's not so they can involve themselves in the fire scene. It's just going to be to get to places like we've been talking about. So that's how I feel about the ID. Question about the apparel, same thing.
Yes.
So we were saying earlier, you get 2, but you could buy another one, for instance. I'm thinking of like a 3-day conference.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
And the other thing that I found in the past is commissioners just happen upon a fire scene and they have some sort of ID like this. It gets confusing sometimes. I was fortunate enough to know who they were, but I can tell you some captains didn't and things like that. And it got confusing. So if it said commissioner on it, I think it'd be great. Because once the captain found out they're a commissioner, then they run up there and say, "Hi, boss, let me show you what we're doing," rather than trying to say, "Hey, get the hell out of our way."
All right.
I think that's really an important point, Commissioner Wittes, and that is, I would probably more enjoy rather than some of the apparel that I've had to date that say South County Fire on the back actually have some big words that say commissioner, because for that very reason, thank you so much for giving that example, because once you're identified as that person, it's sort of like when the president used to come and visit my disaster scenes when I was with FEMA. It was very disruptive. On the other hand, it was also an opportunity to showcase and demonstrate to commissioners the value that our highly trained and highly prepared and highly valuable members of our department who do this job daily in and out demonstrate to us what it is that they do, and it makes us more knowledgeable, and it allows us to be more respective when it comes down to supporting them in the field. So better branding as far as differentiating between a line person and a commissioner, I think, at least from my feedback that I received from our union members, seems to go a long way.
All right.
One other comment.
Yes.
The other part I want to say about bad actors, it wasn't so much, I still have a Class A uniform. But the whole idea was, if you're going to get rid of it, bring it back here. You want to put it in your wall, so what? You know, stuff like that. It was like, I got a bunch of shirts here to my kid, and he's going to take them over to the farm, and they're going to work on it. It's going to get to some other person, and somebody else is going to wear it. It wasn't about the individual it was issued to. So it's just, if you want to keep it, throw it in your wall. But if you're going to get rid of it, bring it home.
Okay, last thing maybe for discussion on this is if we're talking about commissioners being able to purchase additional items on their own dime, is there any concern or thought to any limitations that we should put on that? I don't know of any off the top of my head. I know that there's been talk about what polo shirt colors we're allowed to get, or what we've been traditionally, offered. I don't know if that has come up. We haven't never talked about it when I was here, but if we're making that suggestion, is there any thought to that? I'm gonna definitely say we're not gonna probably have a motion on this tonight, but I'd like to come back to the board with a proposal from this current policy for us to review. But I wanted to get the input at the front end. Any thought from staff?
I think that at some point, somebody had mentioned just having 2 shirts. I don't think that's enough. I think that if we're going to do this, from my perspective, it should be enough to carry the commissioners through a full conference or those sort of things. For staff here, we've got 2 of the long sleeve, 2 of the short sleeve polos, and that's enough. And we don't buy anything else. We don't allow anybody else to buy anything else. If they need it, they need it. We set the standard with a policy or a guideline, and we go from there. That's just how everything else is done in the organization. So just offer that.
Commissioner Vernoff?
Yeah, I just want to mention about the quality. The polo shirt I was given, which is a Nike brand, is outstanding. It's been great. It's a red one. I tend to wear it probably the most of anything else. I was also given, I think it's the Sport Authority shirt, or maybe it's the Cornerstone. I'm not sure. I can just say this. It's probably one of the worst shirts I've ever been given. And reason being is it's based on the material. I have, by contrast, a 511 tactical shirt. It's a dress shirt that holds its seams, and it's got multiple pockets and some other stuff. That thing is so rugged and is held up through I don't know how many disaster deployments, and it looks the same from the day I bought it. I walk around with the Port Authority one, and it collects every lint in the room. And if you try to slide your sleeves in another coat with any sort of that fleece lining, it gets hung up, and it's probably one of the poorest choices as far as a garment is concerned. Now, by contrast, the 511 shirts, which we bought, I think about 65 of them when we outfitted our incident management team, they were expensive, but they were well worth the money. Whatever shirt you choose to do, if they don't embroider correctly, don't worry about an embroidery. Just have a patch sewn on it. Actually, patches might be a little more expensive per unit, but patches are, again, removable at the termination of your duty. Thank you.
All right. There's no further discussion on this. I would just propose I would like to include the chief here on helping to draft this and get it right. And if any other commissioner wants to be involved in that, as long as we don't have more than three, just let me know and I'll get that together for the next meeting so we can get this done and get it off of our plates. If there's any comments or input from any of the other staff, especially Public Information Officer Hines, because, image does matter in our organization. I'll try to have a discussion with you and feel free to, put whatever thoughts you have in writing. Yes.
I just offer that since color came up, I think differentiating by color makes sense. Some of the feedback I've gotten from folks on the street is it's sometimes confusing when commissioners are there and they're not sure kind of exactly who this person is. So both to Commissioner Fairno's point, saying commissioner, but also maybe just a different color than black or blue might be useful because then it's really clearly a distinct, unique role that you do have.
Chartreuse. Bright yellow? No? All right. We'll work with the chief to try to come up with something that fits with the organizational branding but hopefully is not confusing to staff. All right. Moving on. Fire marshal and prevention duties for discussion. This is Deputy or Assistant Chief Bob Eastman and Deputy Chief Anderson and Deputy Fire Marshal Dave Sherman's presentation. I don't know who's leading this, but
Chair, if I may, could
Yeah.
we request for staff that we could take the Community Risk Reduction Week recognition resolution with Sean first, possibly just because the discussion is going to run long
sure.
on the prevention piece.
We need let's go.
Oh, sorry. I was asking if Sean Rees. Oh,
As
gotcha. All right.
As
Thank
long
you,
as there's
Commissioner.
no objection, the chief has asked that we move up item 9B, just in the interest of time. If there's no objection, we'll move to that, which is Community Risk Reduction Week Recognition Resolution. This is for action with Outreach Manager Sean Ray Guzman, and we're just going to table the fire marshal discussion for hopefully next.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Rowland. This is in page 13 and 14 in your packet, and this is just asking for your support and signature on the Community Risk Reduction or CRR Week resolution. And this is just to recognize our commitment as a fire agency to reducing the occurrence of emergency events in our community. And this is something that we live every day, and the ultimate goal is to keep our community and our firefighters safe. And so you can read through the resolution. I kept it pretty simple, but if we can get your support on that, again, we live this every day, but we're recognizing it this week or next week, January 15th through the 21st. And then in addition to that, I know Megan did say that we had 2 open houses coming up Thursday and Saturday. I did send a full list of events to Melissa, and she has those and will forward them out to you so that you can come to those events when you're available. Please know that the Thursday and Saturday events these weeks are subject to weather because we have ever-changing forecasting, so not quite sure what's going to happen, but we will give ample notice if those need to be canceled. And that's actually all I have.
All right.
Thank you
So
for letting me go early.
Yep, no problem. So we have resolution number 01092024-01 for consideration. Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
Motion to approve.
All right. It has been motioned and seconded to adopt the resolution. Discussion? This is designating the week of January 15th through January 21st to be CRR week, which is Community Risk Reduction Week. All right.
Make a comment.
Sure.
Risk reduction is so important.
Microphone.
Exactly, Sean, you guys did a very good job in go out to give us seminars and preventing. That really helped us to reducing. I always said the call never make is more important than the call that make. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. If there's no further discussion, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor of adoption of the resolution, say aye.
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 All those opposed? The ayes have it.
Great,
All
thank you.
right. Moving back, let's pick up where we left off with the discussion on fire marshal and prevention duties.
Thank you, Chair Rowland, commissioners, staff, and members that are listening online. I don't get caught on my heels very often. And Commissioner Kenny, 4 weeks ago at the work session, when you asked the question you did, I did. With regards to the fire marshal and staff has then such the last 4 weeks have been drinking from a funnel. At least I have, with regards to looking at fire marshal and code official duties. And you're going to hear me use that term, fire marshal and fire code official duties. And you'll hear that nomenclature as we talk about fire marshal moving forward. And there's very specific reasons for that. The RCW talks about fire marshal, the International Fire Code talks about fire code officials. And so I'm learning the verbiage and what this, why I'm doing this is it's all about RCW and code path. And we'll get more into that as we continue to talk about this down the road. But what I want to do is I said I'd come back at the work session and give you an update with regards to fire marshal and fire code official duties and the RFA. And my hope is to keep this at the 100,000 foot level because staff has a lot more work to do. But there are some implications with regards to the budget on what I found and how we interpret both the RCW and the fire code. And I had a brief conversation with Richard this afternoon. And I know he's done a lot of work on this topic for a neighboring fire district. And so I guess I'll start with if you look at the RCW now that we created the RFA, with the cities that have actually annexed into the RFA, the RCW, based on how I've read it, interpreted, including what Todd and David Sherman in concurrence, is that the fire marshal is identified in the RCW as the agency having jurisdiction, which would be us. By virtue of the cities annexing into the RFA, as a result of them, the city mayor no longer being able to appoint the fire chief, they lose control of the fire marshal. And as we being the agency having authority, we thou are the fire marshal. And by default, Chief Hovis is the fire marshal and the fire code official until he delegates it down. Now, as you further read that, and one of the challenges that goes back to the Fire District 11 days and the Fire District 1 days when I first started, was part of my understanding is that the county had the authority in an unincorporated area, which meant they had the authority to do that work in Fire District 1 or 11 at the time. And as I continue to do the homework, I'm not so sure that's actually the case. I think we do have, and I'm going to say the way I've interpreted it, and once again, there's more conversation that we need to have with Richard because there's all sorts of legal other things that weigh into this. I think not only do we have the authority, but I think we actually have the responsibility to be doing it in the RFA based on the research we've done, not only through the RCW, but in connection with the fire code. And so, you know, we've got ILAs with the city of Linwood and the city of Mill Creek to do fire marshal work. We've got two interlocals that are pending, one with Briar, one with the city of Montlake Terrace, that are kind of in limbo right now as a result of the work we're doing. And so where we are now is I think the RFA has an obligation to do the work and has the authority to do the work of fire marshal and fire code official duties in our incorporated RFA, which includes everything, not the city of Edmonds because they're a contract. Commissioner Lawrence.
Yeah, does that authority include signing off on the code or creating the code.
Yep.
So we're kicking the county out. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, I guess I'm not going to go far to say that because I need to make sure, you know, I haven't had enough time to work with Richard for our team to work with legal to make sure. I think that's the case is I think we have the ability to do it within the RFA. The county's currently doing it. I think there's conversation to be had. There's a lot of political realities that go along with that. But I think the ability for us to do fire marshal work in our RFA, which includes the cities that have annexed in and the existing unincorporated area, I think we have the ability to do that.
There's
And the
a former board member and former fire chief of a local city that had talked to me for years about is very irritated by the fact that the codes in that particular city were so good they didn't have too many fires anymore, and the county was pretty lax and not requiring fire suppression systems built into like restaurants. Can you believe that? And so I think it might, and I think that's still the case from what I hear. The county not particularly strong on their codes, and so yeah, let's take it over.
So, so one of the things that as we move forward in this conversation, as staff continues to do the work, one of the things that I want to make sure the board realizes or understands is that, you know, our fire marshal is funded by the current ILAs we have with the contract cities. As we move forward, that funding probably should be borne by our general fund and not through ILAs with our contract cities. Because we have the response, I think, as I read the RCW, we have the responsibility, the RCW and the fire code supports that. And we should be doing that work. And we should be doing it, as a core function of our services we provide.
Where would the money come from?
General fund.
I mean, you know,
Our general fund.
it's like we're going to have to raise.
Yeah.
But then the county should lower their taxes
Well, yeah. Okay.
and the cities should lower their
So,
taxes.
well, that's a whole nother part of this conversation. I mean,
Well, I'll have a talk with them.
yeah. But what I guess what I want the board as we go down this path is, you know, as we start having the budget conversation in 2024 for 2025, the reality is just based on just general numbers, our current fire marshal costs are about 2.4 million when you look at the 8 people plus all the stuff that encompasses support with that. And if you take the additional service area, i.e. the unincorporated part of the RFA, and add to that, you're at least doubling that to have the appropriate personnel and resources needed to do that work. And right now, we all know we just got done with the 2024 budget process. There's going to be a need for revenue, additional revenue as we go down this path. And I guess I wanted the board to know that today, as we continue to have the conversation, there is going to be a revenue need associated with it that's over and above what we currently do.
So, just so I have it, do you have a list of the RCWs that you're referencing that are?
Yeah, they're in the commissioner packet.
They're in the packet. All right.
And there'll be more, so you know, those are the big highlight ones.
Those are the main
And
ones.
I guess I don't have all the answers. I know enough that I needed to have the conversation with the board and bring it up. But there are multiple conversations that me and staff need to have. We need to work with Richard to make sure, you know, I'm good at reading RCWs, but interpreting we use Richard for that and to make sure when you do all that, we're on the right track. But I think we need to go down the path. I think it's something we need to do. We can't let the grass grow. And there's fiscal impacts associated with it that I want to make sure the board knew about. Commissioner Lawrence.
Yeah, the cities though would still have the building code requirements there. We wouldn't be part of that. So it can influence them.
Yeah,
as far as for the fire protection.
Yeah. So let me explain what from a workflow, and and I'm going to let David or Todd fill in where I mess up. There, if you look at it, and I have learned this now, and we'll see how well I've learned it, is when you look at the fire marshal and fire code official duties, if you think about it in two different arms, one arm being investigations. So you talk about arson investigation, general fire investigation, general building inspections, and all those other side is the investigation side of what we're talking about. Then you have the fire code official or the fire code side, which deals with plan reviews. It deals with new building on-site inspections. Then you have all the other fire code components because the cities actually set their own, not fire code, building codes. County has their building codes. Each respected city has their building codes. And there is a component of that for us to influence potential change in building codes. For instance, we've been quite successful in certain cities with required sprinklers in residential properties, over, I think it's 3,000 square feet. So we've had some of that influence. So think about it in those two arms, and it is all of that. It's the whole, it's everything. So for example, go ahead.
We had much luck influencing the county on codes.
Not as much as we would like. I think we get asked. I mean, I think we have a really good relationship with at least the county fire marshal's office and the fire marshal's office plan reviewers, and they do ask our input. I don't think we have a say per se, but we are asked on, I don't know if it's on everyone, but on occasions we get asked, and they ensure we know things that are unique that we know. We have that kind of relationship, but right now the county fire marshal signs off as the fire code official and the fire marshal for all the new construction going on in the county. What we're talking about is if this goes that way, they won't be signing off on anymore. It will be us.
But they're the decider on the actual code requirements like suppression systems. And so if they put in lax requirements, then we're stuck with the consequences of more fires. Uncontrolled.
I guess I would say, Commissioner Lawrence, I'd be very surprised that they're not staying compliant with the fire code, the International Fire Code, right? I mean, the fire code is the book they use, which would be the same book we use or the same book we use in the contract cities. So unless they're just not following the fire code, which I would be very surprised that the fire marshal's office is not, there's risk there on their side that they do that. So from my perspective, what this does is, we would do the pre-plans on those, and our fire marshal and fire code official would be the ones signing off on those plans for any construction to be done, right? So when Commissioner Kenny talked, 4 weeks ago with regards to, we want input, we want our professionals' eyes on it, we want our professionals making sure that have the right people doing investigative work. We have the right people doing plan reviews and not have, the construction we have going on now in South County to be 50 and 100-year problems. What we found is I think we have an answer, and we probably need to jump into that game. And that there's financial implications that I want to make sure the board's well aware of, because it's not little. And the challenge is as we deal with Briar and Montlake Terrace, and what brought this up is Montlake Terrace, the challenge with the cost of, our fire marshal contract, is we don't have a lot of time. We need to I'm hoping after this meeting, I get an idea of where we're going. I can go talk to the city manager and tell him kind of the direction we're heading, so he doesn't go down a path of hiring civilians and some of those other pieces to do that, for us to get in the game. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess, okay, I'm getting this straight in my head now. I understand. And I guess what I was referring to is the city of Linwood had regulations, building code that surpassed the national, the code. So they're doing a minimum, and city of Linwood, let's say, went the extra mile.
Mhm.
And that's what I'm about influence, the influencing to go the extra mile to get a little bit better than the minimum.
I'm hoping we'd have a lot more influence at that point in time. Right. And I think one of the things when you look at influence, I can't remember, I was talking to one of the commissioners about this is I'm happy to say this, and it's a time of how big we actually are, is when you guys get elected, you have 127,000 registered voters that vote for you, every one of you. And if you look at the county council, each representative in the county council has 106. The only people that have more registered voters that vote them into office is PUD and your county elected officials, i.e. the sheriff, the county exec, and the treasurer. So in that context, we do have influence differently, Commissioner Lawrence, and that will weigh into the rest of the conversation that we're having.
Correction, only 63% of those 127,000 voted me, sorry. All right.
Agreed.
Just pause the discussion just for a moment. I wanted to get, see if there was any input from DC Anderson or our fire marshal as to the history of this, anything that you'd like to contribute to the discussion.
I mean, for me, it's a huge education piece for this last month going through this and going through some of the RCWs. I'm anxiously waiting for future discussions with Rich Davis and getting his input on this or hearing his opinion on the RCWs.
So
I think we have an obligation to own this. I really do. As far as an
Have
organization.
you reviewed this already with Rich Davis, or has that not gone through with him yet? Or is it just preliminary and we need to do more?
No, Rich and I talked about it this afternoon. He read the agenda bill and had an idea of what we were going to discuss and was in general concurrence. Obviously, there's lots of detail in this, and more work. You know, when it talks about Snohomish County and doing it in unincorporated, there's more work to be done. But as we go down the path, like I said, I think we have the obligation. I think we have the responsibility. We need to go do it. And that's for the whole RFA and for the board. You know, early on, I wanted to make sure, you know, there's a fiscal impact for this. And I wanted everybody to know it as we start the journey. And not say, oh, by the way, we did all this and there's a $4 million price tag to it and have that come at the very end. So yes, there's a lot of work to do, but we don't have a lot of time. This isn't, we're going to wait till the end of this year to fix it. I think we have to fix it like within the next couple months to figure out how this works, get it in play and start moving forward and doing the work. And so, but staff needs to set some dedicated time with Richard to make sure we dot our I's and cross our T's. And then, you know, there's a lot of political realities that go along with it too. It's not as simple as, because you have 4 cities, you have a county council. I mean, you have lots of other players that are part of this that we need to make sure strategize and navigate how we go down this process at the end of the day. Because there's actually a lot of moving pieces to it.
Yes, and Hoffman.
My question's for Attorney Richard Davis. Looking through this, the first RCW, which seems to be the main gist of what's going on here, it keeps referring to Regional Fire Protection Service Authority Plan. Is that what Mountain Lake Terrace signed when we came over to the RFA, or does that describe a different document?
The RFA plan is the document that the governing board amends every time a municipality, or I'm sorry, a city joins the RFA. So it's not something that an annexing city signs. It's something that the governing board signs. And if you go back to the RFA plan, you'll see that it provides that fire marshal services are going to be provided by interlocal agreement. So if we do this, one of the things that we will have to do is to go back and amend the RFA plan to say that those services are just provided to the cities that have annexed into the RFA, and take out the business that we do that by contract.
So follow-up question to that. I guess since our RFA plan can specify a different arrangement, the fact that we're doing it the way that we're doing it now is not invalid, and it's not something that has to be changed, but it's something that we could change if we chose to.
I think
But
that's
we
a
could
fair
continue
statement.
on with ILAs if we wanted to as well.
That's how I see it. Yes.
And if we chose to go forward with ILAs, would the participating jurisdictions have the authority to go outside of an ILA to get that service? Or, I mean, I just want to understand what options they would have with the current way that we're doing things, because I know there's concern about them going elsewhere, staffing up, making them city positions, things like that. Do we decide what they're going to do for fire service, or do they?
For fire marshal service? you
Fire
mean?
marshal service. My
No,
apologies.
that would, I believe that's up to the city to decide how they provide those services. And what this discussion is about is having the RFA do that by virtue of the cities having annexed into the RFA. But if we don't do this, one of the options that the cities could have is to provide those services elsewhere, either in-house staff, or contract with somebody else to provide those services.
But as the jurisdiction and authority, my understanding, this is why I definitely would love some deeper dives into these RCWs to understand what the options on the floor are, is that it's our authority unless we otherwise provide for it in the plan, correct?
We can provide for it. Yes, we can provide for it in the plan to provide it either by contract or just provide it as a service that the RFA provides. Again, I just want to make issue a caveat here. This is preliminary. And
of course,
and there's work that I need to do. And so when Bob, mentions that we need to have further discussions, this is preliminary. I think we want to kind of get in front of the board and let the board know, what this entails financially, but I need to do more work on this. So I'm not really going to be in a position to answer a lot more detailed questions on that tonight.
all right. Well, we'll let you do your legal review and look forward to a follow-up on where we're at now, if we're good, what we can do in the future, and kind of the analysis as to cost and benefit and risk with any of the decisions that we choose to make. All right, is there any further questions? Yeah,
The only question I have is there an issue right now with Mount Lake Terrace and Briar that we have to approach?
I'm sorry. We had an interruption there. Could you repeat your question?
Is there any issue that we have right now with Mount Lake Terrace and Briar that we have to address? Like supporting it or?
So right now, Malt Lake Terrace is struggling with the cost of the ILA and is looking at seriously looking at other options, and they have not signed the current ILA. And so the challenge is if we do something with the city of Malt Lake Terrace, we have two other cities that have contracts. We're gonna have to I don't think it's one where we can just deal with Malt Lake Terrace or Briar and then deal with Linwood and Malt Lake Terrace or Mill Creek later, right?
Together, but
The reality is, yes, I think we have a short window.
But is that short window January 1st?
No, I think my hope is that I can go have a conversation with Jeff and say, hold off.
That's what I mean.
We'll play. We're going to give you what we've been giving you as we work through this issue from the RFA's perspective.
That's what I was wondering.
That's where I want to go, and I'll see how well that works tomorrow. But I didn't want to go there until we had this conversation tonight because if it was very clear we didn't even want to entertain doing any of this ourselves, we wanted to continue on the path we were, my conversation would change very much with the city manager of Malt Lake Terrace. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but we may be going down this path and find out that it's an obligation, not a choice.
I agree.
Okay.
And what we don't want to do is have, potentially a contract city go and hire people and already make a decision, and that complicates where we're going.
That's what I was wondering.
Right.
So do you need our support to allow you to say, hold off? Is that what you're looking for? That's what I'm wondering, to say, can you we'll supply services for?
I don't know if I guess that may not be a bad idea to say hold. I think it comes in line with, and we, for us to actually execute this, to actually have it funded by our general fund, we need to amend the RFA plan, which is very, very simple. But obviously that work needs to be done and bring it back to the board to make that decision. But at that point in time, you know, we're still figuring out what we do with the current ILAs and how do we
Correct.
unravel those pieces. So, I think where staff wants to go is we want to put a pause on Montlake Terrace and Briar, continue to provide the service. Right? And so they know they're getting served and give us time to figure it all out. We probably need to figure out what we're going to do with Mill Creek and Linwood. And I think staff can figure that out with the current existing contract. So we don't get into a place where 6 months from now, we're writing a check back. And I think staff can do that. As we continue to navigate this over the next couple months, to, you know, for Richard to do the rest of his work, for staff to do the rest of their work, and kind of package it up to give everybody really what's going on. And then, you know, the whole county animal is something very different that we're working on numbers and number of occupancies and all those other pieces in the county to determine what does that actually mean if we take that over and when would we do that and all those other pieces. So,
Well, I mean, you have to adopt codes, have to do a lot of things down the road. I'm just.
there's fees.
Oh, yeah.
How do we get the fee game and all that stuff? So I guess where staff would like to go is we'd like to put a pause on Terrace and Briar, let them know we're working through it and we want to continue to be their fire marshal work. And I think we've been fairly transparent. So we've not hid this from anybody either, by the way. And then at least then everybody's getting served and it buys us some time to dot I's, cross T's, Richard do the work Richard needs to do. And then for us to, you know, formulate a plan that staff can bring forward and say, okay, here's where we think the best options are, and have deliberation with the board and then, you know, go where that goes.
Gonna go to Liaison Schwisser. Sure.
Finally.
Apologies. Go ahead.
So
Yeah, that one
I
up.
had already spoke to our council about the potential for the contract, and we were prepared to put it actually would have been on tonight's meeting to pass it for I'll round it up, the $20,000 that it would have cost us for fire marshal services. We like our fire marshal a lot, and we think he works really well with the city. And so either way, we have no intention of doing anything other than having South County Fire provide our fire marshal services.
All right. Please.
This potential plan that you're talking about, I mean, I think there's no reason, the cities are gonna be jump at the opportunity, not that to pay us money, right? I mean, there should be no roadblocks from any city.
I think from the elected perspective, across everything we're talking about, I think that's a fairly easy conversation. I think one of the challenges is, and we all know, and like I said, I don't think it comes from governance, but with our current contract, Linwood, I would say Montlake Terrace and Mill Creek, they have control over what the fire marshal does and what the fire marshal doesn't do. When we go down this path, they lose some of that control. We're still obligated to do the work, but they lose some of the control affiliated with that. And you're dealing with building officials. And so the answer to your question is yes, but what we don't want to do is there's the ability for free recovery with this. You know, the fire court official doing plan reviews, you can attach our fee schedule to permits. So when the permits get issued, the permits get collected by the city or the county, and then they remit those permits back to us, those funds back to us. What we want to do is make sure as we do this in a way that we don't actually make anybody so mad that we don't have those struggles. So you're right. I think getting there isn't difficult because I think it saves the current contract cities money. We do the work, we get control back, we get to do and do it in ways that's not constrained by contract, right? I think there's ways that we can do some of the things that aren't being done that we would like to be done. Obviously, there's conversations we have with the board because that deals with people. But we want to make sure that the building officials and the folks that the fire marshal's office needs to interact with. We don't make them so mad that we create horrible friction. And when you talk about, you know, suggesting code improvements and some of those things, that's a well-oiled machine that's relational, and we don't want to start from underground and have to dig ourselves out to build that relationship. So that's a long-winded way of answering your question is yes, but.
So, put this delicately, that there's a lot of players that are going to be affected by this if it's a direction we determine we want to go. It does not sound like we have any plan that's fully baked at this point or even half baked. This is just more of a, we found that there might be a possibility that we could do something. I am concerned about the ramifications of it, both to our budget for the current year, you know, absorbing a $4 million change or a $2 million if we went halfway through the year, is not probably something that's fiscally wise. Looking at the current ILAs that are in place, are they indefinite in duration? Do they have an expiration? Any of the current ILAs?
Yeah, they all have terminations. I will tell you, the city of Linwood's looking at
Not
this.
terminations. When would they need to be renewed? Let me put it that way. Or do they not have a renewal point and there is termination, but there's not?
They do renew, but I don't remember. I off the top of my head, I don't know the terms. I don't know if they go annually or it's 2 years.
Okay.
I can't tell you about the duration, but I believe MLT expired December 31st of 23.
Got you. Given the complexity of doing this, I want to be very careful about, you know, giving the indication that we're thinking about going any direction at this point. We really need to look at this more seriously, look at the funding, look at the options, get legal to weigh in before we go anywhere with this. With the current cities that have annexed in, we now have a situation where we're considering not holding them to the same standard that we've held Mill Creek and Edmonds to when it comes to the ILAs to provide these services to them. I don't know how long it will take for us to get to the point where we are ready to make any change in the way that we do business right now. So my personal feeling is that we should continue on with, at least in a short term, because if we can set the end of these ILAs, getting something before them to cover 6 months, something that is a reasonable time period that we can really suss out the implications and where we want to go with this, because I do not want to rush in to a decision that could, you know, alter our budget by 4% without, and potentially create situations with other jurisdictions. If there's a challenge to it, we don't know what's going to happen. So that's my personal thoughts, is to kind of try to keep going the way that we have been doing things while we figure out what our options are. Commissioner Kenny.
Thank you. I think it's an interesting and great opportunity. Chief Eastman, I was looking for the statutory citation, and I can see that from your materials in 52 RCW 5226-100 for the jurisdictions that have annexed into the RFA and how their fire prevention function or code function related to fire transfers to us. And so I can see that. It seems like here at the start of the year is a good time to address that, because we've just got, you know, within the last year, 2 new cities on board. And I doubt anybody would be too upset about not having to pay more money. So it just seems like now is a great time to address this. It makes sense to me that we would provide that service. And I think that's an exciting opportunity, because we can then make sure that we provide the quality that's necessary for these services through our subject matter experts who are here, who can make that happen, to do the right thing, essentially. My concern about fire marshal services over time at the cities that we've provided service to for many years, or in the strange circumstance where the county does our fire marshal services and we can't do it, it's around the quality and whether corners are being cut. And I've always been concerned about that. The latest dynamic was, well, maybe the cities were going to do a private contractor
for these services. And I'm concerned, it's just to cut corners and we're going to lose quality. This potentially allows us to do this body of work forever. And that's an exciting opportunity to make sure we do it right. And the real power of it is not this year or next year or the year after. It's 3 decades from now. It's 5 decades from now. This is a long-term issue where if we're providing that quality of service, and I'm not thinking of the investigation side, I'm thinking of the plan review side. It's an opportunity to make that built environment, and there's going to be more building in South County. It's only going up. It's not going out. There's nowhere to go. It's got to go up. We're going to have more buildings. To have that quality is going to help people that live here 30 years from now. Because maybe one of the things we've pushed over time here is fire sprinklers, particularly residential fire sprinklers. Is there an opportunity to push the envelope a little bit for safety in ways that maybe we couldn't before because the master builders were pushing back on the other side? So I'm just saying that there are interesting opportunities there where we've got our fingers on the pulse of it, essentially. It's got to run through us to make sure that we've got the quality there. I can see how all that comes together. Chief Eastman, what I don't see is the really more, I don't want to say it's more interesting. It's just as interesting, but it's just a sea change around the unincorporated area. And I don't follow that from your materials of how for the unincorporated area, which we have operated on for decades, as the county has to do it. The county's paying hundreds of thousands, if not more than $1 million in salaries to do fire marshal services in the county, including in South County. There have been issues maybe around quality over time. For us to be able to grab that back, I've commented here before, can we get them to contract with us? We'll take the business and give them a 10% administrative fee just to get the business so we can do the quality work. We'll give them a fee because they need to keep some money at the county. But this would be the opportunity to take it all and do the quality work for the unincorporated area, which is the largest number of people in the RFA, and make that quality happen over time. That's super exciting. It's going to make this area safer in 50 years. But Chief Eastman, what I don't see is, because there haven't been any changes in the RCW, we're reinterpreting or we're doing something different here and looking at that. And that's what I want more of. How did we get this? And we've just operated this way for decades. What's changed? Are we solid in that legal analysis? Because there will be people or entities that are not happy about that because it's changing the status quo. I think it's the opportunity to change the status quo for the better in South County, but there's going to be pushback, and I want to be sure we're on solid ground.
So that's work that we need to do with Richard. I know that, and I guess I'll just let everybody know. David Sherman's also the fire commissioner at District 15 and has actually been working with, in a different capacity, has been working with Richard on this issue with his other hat on, with where he is governance. And so, there is more work to do on that, Commissioner Kenny, to go look at county ordinance, and the county ordinance has some challenges with it because it's on one hand, it says we do it. On the other hand, it says the agencies can do it. And when you talk to staff at the county, it's, well, we do it under past practice. So we do owe you that to get to and those are some of the T's and the I's that we need to make sure as we go down this path that we're solid in our rationale, our reasoning, where the law is and where our interpretation is versus all those other pieces. So that's the work that I still need to do. We've talked about it and with their expertise and the work they've done on the topic. There are the pieces there, but without having consultation with Richard and doing that and doing at least my due diligence on the behalf of the RFA, that's the work I still need to do. I'm confident based on what we already know that there's a way to get there. I just need to make sure that to answer your question, to bring that forward and show the path and and if there is going to be a legal challenge, where would it come from? And those pieces to make sure that we have a game plan if we choose to go down that path that we can. So I do owe more detail, but I wanted to make sure I got in front of the board with what we had and some of the RCWs that are when you read them, you can connect some dots to get there.
If I kind of see a two-step process, and that is we shore up the city side first. The financial impact there to us is not as great as if we took on the fire marshal business for the county. Shore up the city side first, then in the second step, look at the county, and there it's a little bit tougher nut to crack because those folks have been doing the work for many, many years. There's an expectation it's going to continue into the future, but maybe there's a way to do an ILA and have a happy medium. I don't think it'll be total happiness, but a way to massage it so it happens over a number of years. We don't have the financial impact right away. You know, I just see two steps here where it could avoid a huge financial hit right away, but yet start the process of taking care of this and improving the overall quality, which would be a huge win for the RFA.
Don't disagree.
Any thoughts from you, Chief? You've been relatively quiet during this discussion.
No, I'm just absorbing and listening. I think Commissioner Kenny hit it on the head. It's been this way for decades, and I think that we have to take care of ourselves first, which is handling the city issue that's appropriate and timely right now, and look towards the bigger issue as we solve the first one. And it's very political in nature, and you mentioned that as well.
Yes, definitely. So I guess there'll be more discussions on this in the future and outside of here. Is there anything else for tonight? Questions?
Just two things. First, I think Commissioner Kenny, you kind of got this ball rolling on this subject, and you mentioned that in 5 decades, the consequences there are important. And I'm sure when you're 100, you're still going to be a fire commissioner here, and
With my walker.
and you'll be able to send us wherever we're at a report somewhere, somehow. And the second thing is, Commissioner Rowland, that idea, I think what you were suggesting is that we do short-term contracts with the cities until we solve this issue. Is that what you're talking about? So we don't lose the cash flow, and you were talking about, so we don't have to send a check back, but if they were like 6 months contracts and we just with automatic extensions easily done, is that what you were talking about?
I'm not so sure Terrace would sign a short-term contract. I think the challenge we have with City of Montlake Terrace is I don't think they'll do that.
Oh,
Right? Based on the current cost that we've calculated based on how we've done it with the rest of our contract cities. That's the challenge.
well, what option would they have?
Go outsource it themselves, right?
You
And
wouldn't do that, Chesty, would you?
no, I will tell you, they're seriously considering it. They are.
Okay, all right.
And so that I don't disagree with any of that.
Yeah.
It's just the challenge we're up against right now is I'm not sure the City of Montlake Terrace is
No, I
going
mean, I
to do
didn't want
that.
to get that far in. I just was trying to, that's what he was talking about, that Commissioner Roll was talking about, which sounded like a pretty good idea, but like everything's more complicated than it has to be.
Well, it sounds like the city of Briar is not necessarily in the same position and might be amenable to that. We really need to get legal to look over this and understand what options we have, what options the cities have based off of this new understanding, we'll call it, of what the RCWs allow us to do or don't allow us to do. And before we have those answers, we really can't say one way or the other what we're going to do go forward. Except for to try to go forward in the way that we currently are doing things. And you know, as far as Montlake Terrace is concerned, I don't know how fast you guys are going to be, trying to make a decision on this, but getting something short-term in front of them as an option, and then, feeling it out, might be something we can do. And if we're going to exempt them from it, I think the board would need to weigh in and vote on that, as something kind of different from what we're doing from everybody else.
So I'm going to say from a staff's perspective, we need to figure that out because you don't have another meeting for 2 weeks. And I'm just telling you, Terrace is not happy with the cost of the contract. So whatever we do with Terrace, if we're going to do something short term, is going to be different than we do with the other cities, which then becomes challenging and it's in a whole nother world. So and it's not because we don't have a great relationship with Terrace. We do. It's just it's truly a dollars and cents thing. And the contract was $278,000 for one guy. Fire Marshal, Deputy Fire Marshal Sherman doing the work. And that's a big price tag for the work that The bottom line is they're dealing with the same budget constraints everybody else has. And so whatever we do to get a bridge with the city of Montlake Terrace, to be honest with you, it's going to be different than we do with our other contract cities, and it's going to have downstream effects. It's not simple like that. I mean, Briar, Briar, it's a much less dollar amount, and Briar is holding until such time. And if we say we're going to charge them, they'll go approve the contract and we'll have a contract and get the dollars and cents. Terrace is different. And I'm going to tell you just straight up, Linwood's going to be different too, because they don't like the cost either. So this is a challenge that is not going to go away. And we run the risk if we don't move, I'm not going to say lightning speed, but if we don't move with due diligence, we're going to be in a position where, we have a city that's doing it differently and outsourcing it, and currently the plan, they can do that. And I know we got the city of Linwood considering that, and those conversations about what their fire marshal contract looks like and what they can change in it is probably conversations that are going to happen within the first quarter of this year moving forward. So I guess I just want the board to know where we are is we can do that, but I'm pretty sure I know what the answer is going to be unless we do something different, which then impacts everybody else that we do business with. So, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure where staff sits now with regards to the topic on how we move it forward. I think we need to go forward, and staff's going to go forward with figuring out how to do the work and how we do it and dot I's, cross T's to get it in. It won't be hard. We know what the cost of our current fire marshal's office is. We know what the budget impact would be. We can come with a plan of how we would deal with that budget impact so the board knows all those pieces. But I do have a time sensitive thing with City of Montlake Terrace that if we want to stay in the game, as Commissioner Kenny put it in December, we need to be able to do something with them very, very quickly to put the pause button so we can figure out the rest of the stuff moving forward. So I guess I'll pause there.
Question I have is to do the pause button. I haven't been around the annexations, but are we obligated and or providing service from January 1st? We already have.
So we have to date. So David's still been down there.
Correct, with no interlocal agreement.
We're not,
Okay.
but we've been doing it as a result of knowing we did the homework. So,
Yes.
so right now we've continued because we haven't had a chance to come back and talk to the board about it.
No, I totally agree. But then in that case, for liability and everything else, does the board need to say, we will put a pause on it and supply services to the city of Montlake Terrace for 60, 90 days? That's all I'm wondering. Does that make it better legally? And
I guess I defer back to Richard because I don't know, because I think, I don't know. I don't have a good answer for
provide
that.
services without an agreement. Sorry.
I think it probably makes sense to do that actually. Because if you go back to the RFA plan, it says that the services will be provided by interlocal agreement, and we're not doing that right now.
Was this a miss during the annexation to not have that ILA set up ahead of time, or was it just something that normally we did afterwards? I'm kind of.
Afterwards, they've had the ILA since October. So they've just have been looking at the dollars and cents and looking at alternatives. So sometimes we have the fire marshal's agreement done at the time the annexation, the plan's done and everything's voted on. And in other cases, we've negotiated the ILA later, right? So in the city of Linwood, we negotiated the ILA after the RFA was formed. City of Montlake Terrace, they didn't want to have the fire marshal's ILA as part of the conversation. They wanted to negotiate the fire marshal ILA after everything was done. So that was just how we did it in negotiations within the pre-annexation agreement, and agreed to negotiate that document after the fact, which is what we've been doing. They just haven't signed off on it.
All right.
Let me say this a different way. This is the first time we've had a contract city that we've had to do this with. that was a previous contract city that is annexed in, both with Briar and Mount Lake Terrace. Previous to that, it was the formation of the RFA, and it was the city of Linwood becoming part of the RFA with Fire District 1, and then subsequently Mill Creek annexing into the RFA as a non-contract city. So this is the first time we've had this experience.
Understood. I wasn't trying to imply that we missed something or.
No,
or I
we
was
didn't
just
take,
trying to
we didn't
understand
take it that way.
the
We just want to put it in context.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. If there's no further discussion right now, I think we had kind of advice to make a formal vote to at least set a short-term time period for this to be kind of suspended with the city and provide the service. Is that correct? That was a recommendation there, Attorney Davis?
Yeah, that's what I think I would recommend. Correct.
And I guess I would recommend we do it for both Briar and Mount Lake Terrace.
We have a meeting next Tuesday. Under our current, thinking about this, we already have the authority to do it. Why don't we wait a week, have you touch base with the cities and see if they'd like to do a little extension of our ILAs, or if they're good with us doing under our assumed authority for 60 days, 30 days, whatever is necessary to kind of put together what you're thinking, so that we're not acting like without authority, shall we say, in these services, that whatever the licenses or permits that are signed off on could be challenged or something. We want to be sure we're, acting with authority. I gotta believe they would be amenable to something short term, and that way it buys us a week to sort it out. Because my fear is we'll do some motion and they disagree with it. Their attorney is going to want it in a slightly different way, and it's like, if we can wait a week and if you're able to sort it out, that's not a lot of time, but I know you've got good resources to figure it out.
Staff can do that. We'll do that, and we'll bring something back at the next meeting, and we'll give some time to work with Richard and do some of the other things to get us where we need to go. And I guess I want the board to know staff's been working on this diligently for 4 weeks. So I don't have a plan to put in front of you and bring forward, but I will tell you the two gentlemen sitting up here with you, they have a plan and it's more than half baked. There's just other pieces to go. And once again, I don't want to get the cart before the horse, but I know what these two gentlemen have done over the last 4 weeks. So I want the board to know staff is probably further along than I'm representing tonight. As a result, there's other things, and I need to loop in Richard and stuff to get all that stuff squared away. But I can tell you these two have been thinking about it probably longer than the 4 weeks. So I want the board to know this has been on the radar, and it's been the number one thing those two gentlemen have been working on since Commissioner Kenny voiced his concerns at the last work session in December. So I just want to make sure the board knows that we're not coming at it for the first time tonight. We've been doing our due diligence on the back. It's just not ready for this without some of the other stuff that we're talking about today. So thanks. And thanks to the two gentlemen who've done all the work.
All right.
Yeah, what Commissioner Kenny proposed sound pretty reasonable to me. Are you kind of saying, yeah, that's.
I'm great with it. I'm great with it.
All right. Okay, we have one more item before we get into the executive session to take care of. And that is Mount Lake Terrace Raise Grant Support Request for discussion. Before we go into that, I'm going to propose a quick, let's do a 10-minute recess for bio break, and we'll come back and handle that and then go into executive session. All right, finishing out our agenda. Thank you. Finishing out the agenda for this meeting, we need to go on to Mount Lake Terrace Raise Grant Support Request for discussion. Liaison Hoffman, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, commissioners, for listening to me. The city of Mountain Lake Terrace is seeking a RAISE grant, which is the Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity discretionary grant provided by the Department of Transportation in the amount of $23,600,000 and for the preliminary design for 57th for 2B. Let's see. Yeah, so what the idea here is the downtown core of Mountain Lake Terrace has been rezoned. So depending on where you are, the development has to be between 4 and 12 stories. So some of it'll go to 6 stories. It just kind of depends on where you are in the town center map. And this will put in the infrastructure that's necessary in order to support that type of development, which is transportation oriented development. The idea being that the light rail station will open up and that people will actually be able to walk to the train and get on the train to go to the major work hubs in the area. That about sums it up. We'll put in our grant application by February 28th with the Department of Transportation, and we would appreciate the support of the South County Fire District.
All right, any questions?
No, are you competing with some other authority now, or are you really on the grant? Are you in any competition from in other cities or other area we want to fund?
At this point, we haven't heard of anybody in our area that's putting in for a construction grant, which is what we're putting in for, as opposed to a design only grant. So that kind of changes what category you fall into. Last year, Shoreline received a grant, I believe, in the amount of 20 million to build a pedestrian overpass over I-5 in their city. And I believe the year before that, Linwood received one of these grants for development by where the light rail train station will be. But countrywide, nationwide, there is a lot of competition for this. And I believe there's $49 billion available for this. This is here specifically to rebuild the infrastructure in the country and to redevelop downtowns.
Right. No, I think it's very important. I think the light will impact everybody. And then it's not fair that you, city alone, kind of held to be responsible, because I know a lot of people who drive down to Modern Terrace and get on the train. It's not just the residents. So I think it's only fair. I definitely support you. And then I'm also kind of going along the line. I think South County Fire really needs some other support from the South Transit or other people for operation, because our operation will be intensified too for the transient people coming through. So I definitely, I personally really strongly, we definitely support you.
I should have added this in here. The total budget as we know it now, this is an approximate budget for these 2 phases of the project as they stand with what I told you is 40,507,000, of which we have 16,812,000 already. This will finish off that amount needed for.
So you're gonna get that 60 million from somewhere else, or it's the same?
Yeah, most of that is accounted for, and I believe we're asking the state for another 2 million, and about all the rest of it's already in grants that have been allocated from the state or in local utility money that's going in TIF money, which is transportation improvement funding.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No questions. I support us signing this letter.
Question kind of for staff. Historically, have we been asked to weigh in on similar kind of grant applications in the area? And I'm kind of just trying to understand.
I can't
This is
recall.
new for me.
I can't recall the last time. It's very, very infrequently.
And as
The reason I'm asking, I just make sure no other city competing with you.
Not that I'm aware of, but we're not exactly talking to each other about it. If it is a competition, but I'm not aware of anybody else. I don't think. In fact, I think our lobbyist told us that we were the only ones putting in for construction in this area, but that could change, right? We've got until February 28th. So.
all right, so there'll be time. We have our next meeting because this was on the agenda for discussion. We can continue to discuss it. But it wasn't on there for action, I'm looking, and because of the special meeting rules, I don't know. But since we had it for discussion, I think we'll have to wait to approve it till next meeting.
I think,
But,
Chair, I think
if
you can
there's more
approve it
questions,
tonight
we
if you want to,
definitely can.
special meeting. You have a special meeting, so that if you choose to approve it tonight, you can.
Okay. Well, yes, but that was on the agenda as for action. And we can't, I believe by state law, we can't consider things that aren't on the agenda for the special meeting. So I just want to make sure that if we're trying to take action on something that we had in the agenda was for discussion, that we would be covered. Any?
Oh, Jerry, you should know the answer to that.
Hey, pay your attorney to answer that question.
Well, unfortunately, it doesn't look like he's online anymore. As long as that wouldn't derail this.
Oh, no, we really appreciate the consideration and we look forward to hearing your response back.
Okay. All right, any further questions on this?
He's saying it's for discussion.
For discussion.
Yeah, that was my only concern. Apologize on that if that was a miss on the agenda to put it in there for action. But yeah, recommendation was for discussion only. So we'll bring it back up next week. Are there any further questions on this? All right. All right, we'll take this up next week then. If there's any suggestions or recommendations for changes to verbiage or anything in that letter, please try to get those to me so that I can get them in the packet, or that Melissa can get them in the packet. And yes.
If there's any chance that we can add something in there that refers to transportation oriented development at some point in there, that's one of the key points that everybody regionally is looking at right now.
Okay. Well, send me a sentence or two that you want put in there, and we'll amend it so that we can consider it. All right. That brings us to our executive session. Well, let's do commissioner comments before that. Commissioner comments. Yes.
Well, my New Year resolution to have a smile on my face, so I'm still have a smile on my face. And I really hope that everybody now be open mind. Somebody wanted a child commission. I was trying to get it done, but you said defer. I changed my mind. And I think in the past few years, and we have been situations that people kind of like fraternity, like kind of like, make up their mind already, come to the meeting. I just hope everybody, I know I don't give a good speech and pay attention to what I said and not who said it, or, that's a critical. And I think hopefully we can work together, open-minded, and don't become a fraternity type of thing that already have a tribe and people kind of, well, you know what I'm saying? That's a certain group of people will vote, together and such a thing. That's open mind, but we'll tackle each issues by itself. Thank you.
All right. Any further commissioner comments? All right. Just one thing on my behalf. I did reach out to Chief Hovis. There was a shooting that happened in, was it Edmonds? 2 days ago, that
Yes.
sadly the person passed away, and we were involved in that. So just making sure everybody's okay. Those are traumatic events for not only the victims, but also the people that have to try to get them to the hospital and save them. And unfortunately, we didn't make it this time, but I'm glad to know that our staff has the tools at their disposal to help, deal with the impacts of these events. So thank you guys for all the hard work.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. If there's no further commissioner comments, seeing none online, we will move to executive session, review the performance of a public employee pursuant to RCW 42.30.1101G. I don't believe for action, just no action to, let's go with 30 minutes. Let's go 20 minutes. Hopefully we can get through.
The executive session has been extended for 5 minutes.
Bring the people first.
Hold on a sec. Meeting's called back to order at 10 PM, and without objection, we are adjourned.
No, I was just, make sure they don't, all people.